Breaking news, we've got a second lawsuit now filed by the District of Columbia against the Trump administration. Enough is enough with the National Guard roaming free in the District of Columbia, armed and dangerous, not trained to protect the civil liberties of those people that live there, on the phony representation that there was a crime problem in the District of Columbia. 2 weeks ago, the Brian Schwalber, who is the Attorney General for the DC, for the district, the only Attorney General in DC that I respect, brought a case in front of Judge Reyes in which ultimately he was able to obtain what he wanted, to get Donald Trump from taking over and commandeering the Metropolitan Police, effectively cutting out the mayor and the chief of police. And that was resolved on the courthouse steps, if you will, after Judge Reyes said she was going to enter an injunction in favor of the District of Columbia. Now, things have gotten a lot better for the District of Columbia position since then, because on Tuesday, federal court Judge Breyer found that Donald Trump in California violated the Posse Comitatus Act, that he was, in effect, building illegally, unconstitutionally, a federal police force with himself as chief. Those were Judge Breyer's words. Now, that has now come over to the new lawsuit just today by the District of Columbia. What they're saying is that by taking the National Guards from 7 different red states, putting them together under the Federal Marshals Program, the Federal Marshals Authority, arming them as Pete Hegseth has done, and letting them roam the streets with military gear, military equipment, military transportation, some of which have hit and injured civilians on the streets with no training on proper civilian law enforcement. Trump has violated the separation of powers, the sovereignty of the District of Columbia, the Administrative Procedures Act, and it's time for the National Guard to go. It was all based on a lie that's spelled out in the new complaint. The lie is that it's a crime-ridden, crime-infested place, D.C., with skyrocketing numbers. There's higher crime in 23 Republican cities, Republican states and their cities than there is in the District of Columbia. 2 years in a row, its crime dropped 20% or more. As Donald Trump took to the airwaves to say, I don't like the fact that one of my 19-year-old staffers got caught up in a carjacking with a bunch of teenagers. So I'm going to federalize all of the District of Columbia. No, you're not. Now, this case hasn't yet been assigned, but it will be assigned to a judge. I presume it's going to be Judge Reyes, who just 2 weeks ago looked the Department of Justice in the eye and said, this is my easiest case all day. You have a timer. You can only be in the District of Columbia for a limited amount of time. After that, you got to go. Is there any suggestion that you're not going to be going? They said no. But now we have new reporting that Donald Trump is saying he's going to stay. He's going to continue the takeover of the District of Columbia, hence the filing of the new complaint. You're on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. Let's get down to the allegations. Let me read to you from the actual complaint so you can get kind of a point of reference. Paragraph 1, over 2,200 National Guard troops from 7 states and the District of Columbia are currently patrolling the streets of the district dressed in military fatigues, carrying rifles, and driving armored vehicles. We are not supposed to have a standing army at the command of the president. We're not supposed to have federales that are running around, making everybody uncomfortable, not fighting crime. But paragraph 1 continues, the U.S. Department of Defense has directed these troops to conduct core law enforcement activities, including presence patrols and community patrols. And despite the fact that these troops are in state militia status and thus are legally required to be under the sole command of their governors, the president has placed them under the control of the nation's military leadership. The residents and the leaders, paragraph 2, of the District of Columbia have not requested any of this. But the president has determined that the district is what he calls a filthy and crime-ridden embarrassment as grounds. Paragraph 3, page 3. None of this is lawful. For one thing, defendants' deployment of the National Guard units to police district streets without the mayor's consent violates the Home Rule Act and a congressionally approved compact governing the interstate mobilization of state National Guard. Furthermore, paragraph 4, defendants' command and control of the out-of-state National Guard when they are in state militia status violates the Constitution and federal law and flout the Posse Comitatus Act against using the American military on domestic soil for civilian law enforcement purposes. This is what They say our founding framers wanted on page 7. At the nation's founding, the framers divided control over state militias in order to protect individual liberty and the sovereignty of the separate states. That's the point. You can't have a standing army. That's what we left in England, under the control of the king or president. The states are sovereign here in the United States. They made a compact by way of the Constitution and created a federal system, but each has power and is co-equal with and is paramount within their sphere. And there's a reason we didn't want to freak out the states when we yoked them together into 50 states. Instead, we said, all right, you can keep your state militias. We may train them, we may fund them, but you can have them under your command. And they were like, okay, then we'll join the union. I mean, I'm giving a brief history of about 100 years of military history and the founding of this country, but you got the point. So after going through that and the fact that in 1976, 1977, the District of Columbia, which was begging for statehood, got instead home rule over their district, subject to certain limitations. Donald Trump has completely abused that. And then we have all of the factual allegations, starting on page 14 and 15, by Donald Trump attacking the District of Columbia, and then the photos of everybody on the streets that are paramilitary troops, federal police force, as Judge Breyer said just on Tuesday, patrolling the streets because of Donald Trump. Then, of course, there's the now famous National Guards member. This shows you why you're not supposed to have them on the streets, because of the threat to liberty, to civil liberty. These militia, these National Guards people are not trained to do civilian law enforcement. They are not trained on the Supreme Court precedent when it comes to due process, when it comes to Fifth Amendment rights, when it comes to search and seizure. They're not trained for that because that's not their job. And then there's this famous photo in paragraph 129 of a mine-resistant, ambush-protected, all-terrain vehicle. Are there landmines in the District of Columbia that I didn't know about? So we have to have a MATV vehicle which rammed into the side of like grandma's SUV, crushing it? Because what is that doing on the streets of DC? Making everybody that lives there very, very uncomfortable. Is there any wonder why already, and soon to go lower, tourism to America is down 10% since Donald Trump became president? It's going to go lower. Who wants to go to DC and take a look at armed guards patrolling? Here's what they asked for from the judge. It's on page 51. District of Columbia respectfully requests that the court declare, this is called the declaratory judgment, declare that the defendants have acted contrary to the Constitution by deploying National Guard troops to conduct law enforcement, exercising command and control over out-of-state National Guard troops, to deputizing members of the National Guards as special deputy U.S. Marshals, ordering the National Guard to carry service weapons, placing Department of Defense officials, including the Secretary of the Army, in operational command and control over this force. So again, we have this is an exact violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. This is command and control by the U.S. military to conduct civilian operations on domestic soil. That is literally a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. They also want a permanent and preliminary injunction. They want a stay and the rest. Now, this case filed by Brian Schwab, who is the Attorney General for D.C., not to be confused with Pam Bondi. The only Attorney General I respect is Mr. Schwab. I invite him onto the show. This will now be assigned to a judge. There will be a temporary restraining order. There will be a hearing, I assume in the next day or two, about the removal of the National Guard once and for all, prying them out of the District of Columbia. And it matters not just in the District of Columbia. It matters to draw the line in the sand, which was started by Judge Breyer in San Francisco on Tuesday, saying that Donald Trump, calling him out for forming a federal police force under his command, which is illegal and unconstitutional and violative of the Posse Comitatus Act. And now the continued line in the sand is, and get the heck out of DC, as he looks to, and salivates over blue cities like Chicago and Philadelphia, where all he's doing is political theater to try to undermine the Democratic brand. Has nothing to do with crime. If you wanted to do crime, pull out the 23 states that are red states, 23 cities within red states that have higher crime rates than the District of Columbia. Certainly higher than New York, or even higher than Chicago. Go do that. No, because they're not headed by governors who are his political rival, like J.B. Pritzker in Chicago, or Shapiro in Pennsylvania, or Gavin Newsom in California. Are you getting the pattern here? Slide over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and subscribe there as well. And I will put up a copy of this particular filing under Filings AF on the Legal AF Substack. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.